Imagine seeing the cracks in a world that everyone else believes is perfect. Imagine betting against the crowd when every voice around you says you're wrong. That's the story of Michael Burry, a man who changed the way the world understands risk, foresight, and financial genius. Before we dive into his journey, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell to explore the minds of people who think differently. Because in this video, you're not just learning about finance. You're stepping inside a mind that sees what most of us cannot. By the end, you'll understand why brilliance often appears as madness to the outside world. Michael Burry's story begins long before hedge funds, headlines, or the 2008 financial crisis. Born in 1971 in San Jose, California, Burry was not a child destined for conventional success. While his peers were occupied with social games, sports, and casual academics, Burry gravitated toward numbers, patterns, and systems. Even as a teenager, he spent hours analyzing data, exploring trends, and seeking order in chaos. This fascination was not just a hobby. It was a window into a mind that would later challenge the very foundations of global finance. His parents noticed his intense focus early on. Where other children were content to follow the crowd, Michael displayed a deep curiosity, independence, and analytical prowess that was unusual for his age. Many would describe such traits as eccentric, but for Burry, they were a necessity. He needed mental space to observe, to understand, and to see beyond what was immediately visible. This solitude and introspection laid the groundwork for the kind of thinking that would later allow him to foresee crises others could not even imagine. Burry's academic journey further shaped his unique mind. He attended UCLA, studying economics, a choice that reflected his desire to understand the mechanics of the world, not merely the surface-level interactions. While other students chased grades or social approval, Burry immersed himself in financial statements, company records, and obscure data sources. He read relentlessly, often isolating himself for hours, training his mind to spot patterns, inconsistencies, and opportunities. Here, the foundation for his contrarian thinking was established, a willingness to trust evidence over opinion and data over popular consensus. But Michael Burry's path was unconventional. After economics, he pursued a medical degree and became a neurology resident. This detour into medicine might seem unrelated to finance, but in reality, it honed critical skills: attention to detail, patience, careful observation, and disciplined reasoning. Medicine taught him the value of thoroughness and the importance of understanding complexity in layers, a skill he would later translate seamlessly into his financial analysis. The precision required in medicine mirrored the precision needed to detect hidden risks in the financial system, laying the psychological groundwork for his future accomplishments. Even during these formative years, several psychological traits became evident: deep curiosity, independent thought, analytical obsession, and a quiet resilience to criticism or social pressure. He was not swayed by external opinions or conventional wisdom. Burry's early life revealed a pattern of thinking differently, questioning assumptions, and persisting in solitude, a combination that would prove invaluable when he entered the world of investing. By the time he started his hedge fund, Scion Capital, Burry's mind was a well-honed instrument. He approached investing not as a game of chance, but as a field requiring scientific rigor. His early life experiences, the hours of study, the isolation, the immersion in complex systems, culminated in a mindset uniquely suited to recognize risk before it became obvious. He was not merely intelligent. He was methodical, disciplined, and unafraid to stand alone when conviction demanded it. Understanding Michael Burry, therefore, is not just about knowing his biography. It is about recognizing a mind cultivated through years of focused observation, relentless curiosity, and disciplined thinking. His early life teaches us that genius often grows quietly, nurtured in solitude, and revealed only when circumstances demand courage and insight. The traits that made him extraordinary were forged not in the spotlight, but in moments of quiet reflection, intense study, and a refusal to conform to conventional paths. Michael Burry's story reminds us that brilliance is not accidental. It is the product of curiosity, patience, independent thought, and an unwavering commitment to seeing the truth, even when that truth is uncomfortable, lonely, or opposed by the majority. Before we explore the decisions that made him famous, it is crucial to understand the foundation of his mind, a foundation built long before fame, money, or recognition, and one that continues to shape every choice he makes today. Have you ever wondered what it feels like to be the only person in the room who sees the truth while everyone else is celebrating the illusion? By the early 2000s, Michael Burry was quietly building the tools that would allow him to answer that question, not in theory, but in practice. Having founded Scion Capital, his small but highly focused hedge fund, Burry began analyzing the mortgage market with an intensity few could imagine. The housing market appeared robust to the average investor. Property values were rising, banks were lending aggressively, and consumer confidence was high. To the untrained eye, this was prosperity at its peak. But Burry's mind worked differently. He didn't see what everyone else wanted him to see. He looked deeper, beyond the glossy headlines, and noticed patterns that spelled risk, instability, and eventual collapse. For Burry, the story was in the details. He examined mortgage-backed securities, sifting through thousands of loans, reading the fine print that others ignored. Subprime loans with adjustable rates, borrowers with poor credit histories, and securities that were rated far more secure than they actually were. These were the cracks he noticed. Most investors were dazzled by the surface numbers, but Burry's analytical mind went further, calculating probabilities and forecasting outcomes that most could not even imagine. Yet this clarity came at a cost. Burry's approach was meticulous, obsessive, and time-consuming. He isolated himself for long hours, analyzing data relentlessly, while others celebrated market gains. His team at Scion Capital often had to explain to bewildered clients why he was betting against the booming housing market. Friends and colleagues questioned his sanity. Some even called him eccentric, insisting that the market was foolproof. But Burry's conviction did not waver. He had done the calculations, seen the patterns, and understood the inevitable consequences. The next step was one of courage, as much as insight. Betting against the housing market required not only knowledge, but also the ability to withstand social pressure, ridicule, and skepticism. Shorting mortgage-backed securities was risky and controversial. Investors who followed conventional wisdom saw only danger in his approach. But Burry's mindset, shaped by years of independent thinking and disciplined analysis, allowed him to act where others hesitated. He embraced risk not recklessly, but with precision and certainty grounded in data. As 2007 approached, the cracks Burry had been warning about began to widen. Mortgage defaults increased, housing prices stagnated and then dropped, and the financial world began to tremble. Those who had mocked him were forced to recognize the clarity of his vision. When the collapse fully unfolded in 2008, Scion Capital profited enormously, while the broader financial world suffered devastating losses. Burry's insight was vindicated, but it was more than just financial gain. It was a fulfillment of a principle he had long lived by, understanding the truth, even when everyone else refuses to see it. The psychological elements behind this achievement are profound. Burry demonstrated extreme patience, analytical depth, and emotional resilience. He trusted his calculations, remained undistracted by popular opinion, and maintained the discipline necessary to follow through on a contrarian strategy. To the outside world, it may have looked like madness, yet it was a mastery of observation, logic, and courage, the exact skills his early life had cultivated. By the end of the crisis, one truth became clear. Michael Burry had answered the question he posed at the start of this journey. Being the only person who sees the truth is isolating, challenging, and often lonely, but it is also immensely powerful. Insight without conformity, courage without compromise, and clarity amidst confusion. These qualities allowed him to succeed where most would fail. In the end, Burry's story teaches a crucial lesson. Sometimes the right decision is the one that no one else understands at the moment. It requires patience, precision, and the courage to trust your own vision. To truly understand genius, we must recognize that it often feels like madness until the results speak for themselves. Is genius simply brilliance, or does it often masquerade as madness in the eyes of the world? When people first hear the name Michael Burry, they often hear whispers of madness. To many, his methods seem unconventional, obsessive, or even extreme. Yet, those who take a closer look understand that what appears as madness is actually a window into a highly disciplined, deeply analytical, and psychologically unique mind. Burry's so-called madness is not chaos. It is a carefully constructed framework for understanding the world in ways few dare to explore. From the beginning, Burry's approach to finance has been defined by obsession. He dives into details that others overlook, spends hours studying data that seems irrelevant to the casual observer, and consistently challenges assumptions. While the world around him focuses on trends, headlines, and popular opinions, Burry examines the underlying patterns and inconsistencies that hold the real story. It is this obsessive attention to detail that allowed him to predict the 2008 housing collapse, a feat many called impossible at the time. Equally defining is Burry's loner mindset. He thrives in solitude, not because he is socially awkward, but because his mind requires space to operate at its fullest capacity. Burry's most profound insights often come after long periods of study and reflection, away from distractions, noise, and groupthink. This psychological independence is rare and often misunderstood. To the outside world, it can seem eccentric, even mad, but for Burry, it is a necessity, a mental condition for clarity. Emotional discipline is another pillar of what some interpret as madness. Burry does not allow fear, greed, or social pressure to dictate his decisions. He embraces risk, but only when it is grounded in data and rigorous analysis. Unlike many investors, he does not react impulsively to market sentiment. Instead, he measures, calculates, and executes with precision. To outsiders, this detachment may seem strange or extreme, but it is a hallmark of someone who understands that emotional reactions can cloud judgment and compromise results. Burry's resilience further reinforces his perception of madness. Betting against the world, facing ridicule, and maintaining conviction in the face of doubt requires not only intelligence but emotional fortitude. Most would have succumbed to pressure, abandoned their positions, or doubted their calculations. But Burry's mindset, shaped by years of independent thinking, disciplined study, and deep curiosity, allowed him to endure and ultimately triumph. His perceived madness is, in fact, a combination of courage, insight, and an unwavering commitment to truth. Purpose is a final element in this complex psychological profile. Burry is not driven solely by wealth or recognition. He is motivated by a deep hunger for understanding and a desire to act where others hesitate. This sense of purpose fuels the intensity that some label as obsessive or eccentric. It drives him to explore areas of finance, psychology, and risk that few others will dare to investigate. Ultimately, Burry's madness teaches us an essential lesson about perception and reality. What the world often labels as irrational or extreme may, in fact, be a disciplined method of seeing truths that remain hidden to most. His story invites us to reconsider our assumptions about intelligence, insight, and unconventional thinking. The line between genius and madness is not always clear. Sometimes, it is only visible in retrospect when results validate the vision. By the end of this exploration, it becomes clear that Michael Burry's madness is not a flaw but a feature, a rare combination of obsession, emotional discipline, resilience, and purpose. It challenges us to question the world around us, trust our insights, and recognize that brilliance often walks a solitary, misunderstood path before it is ever celebrated. What can we truly learn from a mind that saw collapse before anyone else, and how can we apply that insight to our own lives? Michael Burry's journey is more than a story about financial prediction. It is a lesson in disciplined thinking, emotional resilience, and independent judgment. By examining his mindset, we can extract principles that are not only applicable to investing, but also to decision-making, problem-solving, and personal growth in any field. The first lesson is the power of independent thinking. Burry never allowed popular opinion, societal pressure, or conventional wisdom to dictate his actions. He trusted evidence, data, and his own reasoning above all else. In an age where following the crowd often seems safer, Burry's contrarian approach teaches us the value of stepping back, questioning assumptions, and forming conclusions based on our own careful analysis. For modern investors, this translates to evaluating markets critically, avoiding herd behavior, and developing strategies rooted in understanding rather than speculation. Closely tied to independent thinking is the lesson of obsessive attention to detail. Burry's predictions were possible only because he examined every layer of information, no matter how tedious or seemingly insignificant. His ability to notice subtle patterns that others overlooked allowed him to anticipate systemic risks that the broader financial world ignored. This teaches us that mastery in any field often comes from deep focus, careful observation, and relentless curiosity. Whether it is analyzing markets, researching a topic, or solving a complex problem, attention to detail can be the difference between success and failure. Another crucial lesson is emotional discipline and resilience. Burry faced ridicule, skepticism, and isolation as he bet against the housing market. He could have abandoned his positions under pressure, but he remained steadfast, managing his emotions while relying on logic and evidence. Modern investors and thinkers can learn from this. Emotional reactions, whether fear or greed, often cloud judgment. Discipline, patience, and the ability to stay calm in the face of uncertainty are invaluable traits, both in finance and in life. Burry's journey also highlights the importance of embracing calculated risk. To many, betting against the housing market was reckless. To Burry, it was a logical response to clear evidence. He teaches us that risk is not inherently negative. It is an essential component of growth, provided it is informed by careful analysis. Taking risks without understanding is gambling. Taking risks grounded in knowledge is strategy. This principle extends beyond investing. Any meaningful achievement in life requires the courage to act despite uncertainty. Lastly, Burry's story underscores the value of purpose-driven action. He was not motivated by fame or wealth alone, but by a drive to understand and act on truth. Purpose fuels persistence, resilience, and clarity of vision. Modern learners, professionals, or investors can reflect on this. When actions are guided by meaningful goals rather than external validation, decisions become clearer and outcomes are more impactful. In applying Burry's lessons, we see that success is rarely a matter of luck. It is a product of disciplined thought, independent judgment, emotional intelligence, and a clear sense of purpose. It reminds us that brilliance often appears unusual or even mad to outsiders, yet the underlying principles are universal. Whether one is navigating markets, managing a career, or making personal decisions, these lessons encourage critical thinking, patience, and courage. Ultimately, studying Michael Burry's mindset allows us to ask a critical question at the start and find the answer here. To act wisely and successfully, we must be willing to see what others do not, trust our reasoned analysis, and maintain resilience in the face of skepticism. His life and decisions provide an educational blueprint for anyone seeking to understand not just markets, but the human mind at its most disciplined and insightful. Michael Burry's journey is more than a story about markets, predictions, or even fame. It is a story about the mind, the kind of mind that sees patterns others ignore, that trusts logic over consensus, and that acts with courage even when misunderstood. His so-called madness is not chaos. It is discipline, insight, resilience, and purpose fused into a rare and extraordinary vision. What we can take from his life is simple yet profound. Independent thinking, attention to detail, emotional discipline, and a clear sense of purpose can turn challenges into opportunities, uncertainty into insight, and skepticism into triumph. Genius often walks a lonely path, but for those willing to see, analyze, and act, the rewards are transformational. If Burry's story teaches us anything, it is this: never be afraid to trust your insight, question the majority, and act boldly in the face of doubt. True vision often appears as madness until the results speak for themselves. Thank you for watching. If you found this journey into Michael Burry's mind inspiring, educational, or eye-opening, hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a deep dive into extraordinary minds. Share this video with someone who wants to understand the psychology behind genius, and comment below your thoughts. What part of Burry's mindset resonated with you the most? Remember, brilliance often appears as madness, but it all begins with curiosity, courage, and a relentless pursuit of truth.